Do you have a set of headphones that aren't working right? Do they work intermittently or not at all? Does one channel work and the other one not? Well, the problem could be the plug that goes into the jack of your playing device, like the iPod or what have you. Now, this happened with my daughter's headphones several times, and I fixed them each time. And now I've decided to make a little video to show you how to fix yours if the same thing happens to you. The first thing you have to do is, of course, cut the old jack from the headphones. And here I show the jack that has been cut from the headphones, and of course the wires attached to it. Now, of course, I've unscrewed the plastic plug or the plastic cover over the plug so you can see the wire attachment. Now, here is the final assembly after you've repaired the headphone plug. And what I've used here is a metal plug. It's made out of brass, and it also has a wire coil on the top, and that's there really to prevent the stress on the wire so it doesn't break so frequently after you've repaired it. And of course the metal housing, of course, that too makes it more durable. But this is the kind of plug that you want to get before you repair your headphones. If you get the kind that have the plastic housing, they generally don't work as well because they don't have that stress reliever on them, and of course they have no durability. Here's the new plug taken apart. It has several pieces. Of course, the wire, the restraint, the tension relief is at the top, and then the metal housing is underneath that, and then inside that housing is a plastic sleeve that goes over the wires that are connected to the plug itself. And I'll show you later on how all this goes together. But in the first place, this shows the assembly, so to speak, that you're going to put on your headphones. The first thing you have to do is put the stress relieving wire into the housing and then pull the wire through that reliever and through the housing itself so that you can now attach it to the lugs, which of course are the terminal points on the plug itself. And I've kind of shown you that here. By the way, you can buy these plugs at Radio Shack. They're not hard to come by. Now here's some of the equipment that you may need. You might need a soldering iron, not necessarily, but have it handy just in case you want to use it. And of course I show some solder up there. And your first job is to use a pair of pliers, cutting pliers, to carefully strip the outside insulation off the wire that you want to attach the plug to. Now, when you get the outside insulation off, you'll find inside there are two wires that are coated with insulation, most often red and green. Sometimes the insulation is not even plastic. Sometimes it's just like a lacquer that's put on there to prevent them from making contact with the other wires after they've been attached to the plug. There's also a couple of third wires. When I say a couple of third wires, I mean two different strands, but these are not coated. They have no insulation on them at all. So the first thing you want to do is strip the insulation off the end of those that are coated. That is probably, and I say probably because the colors could be different, but most often the green and the red wire, so that you have some wire exposed that you can then hook to the plug itself. Now after you get the wires stripped, the next thing you have to do is take the ones that are uninsulated, the bare wires, and kind of spindle them together. In other words, you want to connect them to each other so that you can then connect both those wires to one of the lugs on the plug. So what I'm doing here is trying to twist those wires together. That is the uninsulated wires, not the red or green wires. Now here I show you the wires after they've been stripped and the uninsulated wires have been twisted together, and now they're ready to be attached to the plug itself. Next, you want to pick up the plug and take a small Phillips screwdriver. That's the star type probably. Matter of fact, I'm sure it is if you buy the plug from Radio Shack. And you want to loosen each one of the little screws on the three different lug terminals. That is the connection points. Now after you do that, the job is to connect the wires to those screws. What you want to do is connect one of the insulated wires to the lower screw the other insulated wire to the upper screw, and the wires that were uninsulated that you twisted together to the longest lug. And that's not easy to do. It's going to take a little manual dexterity, but you certainly can do it. What you want to do, of course, is try to wrap the wire around the screw and then tighten it down as tightly as you can. Now here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to slip small pieces of paper in between the individual terminal lugs. And the reason for that is if you have even the smallest strand of wire that makes contact between the terminal lugs, it'll short out and you will get no sound. So if you put that wire in between, you can be sure to keep them separated when you screw the cap back on the plug. Now if you don't want to do that, in other words, it's not that easy to do, to get those pieces of paper in there and make them small enough so that they actually fit under the plug, what you could do instead is take some clear fingernail polish and make sure all the strands of wire are not in contact with each other. In other words, there's no crosstalk. And then what you do is you coat the wires that are attached to the plug, that is the bare wire anyway, with the clear fingernail polish. Let it dry for a while, and that of course will be an insulation, so you won't really have to put the paper in there, but you could use the paper if you want to. It's really up to you. I think the fingernail polish is easier and works just as well. Now here's what it looks like with all the wires attached and the fingernail polish applied, and it's ready now to have the cap put over the top. Now the first thing you want to do is slide that plastic cap, which you have strung through the wire, over the entire assembly. And that plastic, make sure that the wires don't touch the cap itself, because that too would short it out. So you slide the plastic cap over, it's a clear plastic sleeve, and then you slide the metal cap over and carefully screw it onto the plug. And when you get done, you have the completed assembly. Now it's probably a good idea, before you put the cap on and before you slide that plastic sleeve over the whole arrangement, to plug it into your iPod or whatever and make sure that it works. Otherwise, what you're going to have to do, of course, is unscrew the cap, take it apart, find out where the cross connection is, and sever the connection, which is probably by a very fine wire, so that you don't have that shorting. So if you do this before you put the cap on, before you put that sleeve over it, you'll avoid having to take it all apart again and kind of start over. So that would be a good idea. But once you get it done, this is the final assembly, and it's pretty durable, as I say, primarily because you have a nice metal plug on there, and you also have that strain relieving wire. Now, that still doesn't mean that of course you can pull on it with all your strength. It's still going to come detached, but it'll certainly last quite a long time. So that's the story, folks. I've tried to show you how you can fix your headphones and make them work like new if you do it correctly. Good luck.